Hello again and welcome to Bridging the Gap. I'm Ian Hansen, in with intuitive medium and spiritual advisor Brenda Burgett. Brenda, on this edition of Bridging the Gap, we're going to continue to bridge the gap between the world and how you view it. And the you would be any of you that may be out there. And thanks for joining us today here on Bridging the Gap. It was an exciting program the last time, got us started with this subject. We're going to explore maybe a little bit more specifically about this subject, though, on this edition of the program.
Let's get into a few more details, and maybe we can answer some things that people are thinking, wondering about.
Okay, and we have three basic compartments that we'll visit today, and the first of those would be talking about limits as far as how you view the world. And remember, backtracking to the last edition, if you didn't catch it, by the way, you can online at bridgingthegapwithbrenda.com or bridgingthegaptv.com. That's where we are each and every week for you. Also on our YouTube channel and on Ustream. You can look us up there, I should say, by name. Backtracking quickly to the last time around, though, Brenda, getting started with the world and how you view it, we talked about maybe some predispositions to how people view it, and I think figuring out your own and being very honest about it would be the best start you could make.
Yes, and when you're really working with you by yourself, in other words, you're not looking for someone else to give you answers necessarily. You can listen to people like us, and you can read books, but if you honestly look at yourself and say, am I happy? Is this working for me? And if it's not, then I'm creating it. Therefore I can change it. That's the good news.
And that's a tough one for some folks to
sometimes
wrap their minds around. I know I've done that dance with a few loved ones, in particular with their professional life, about, well, you're getting up and going to work every day, therefore you're predicating it. And they say, well, I have to get up and go to work every day. Well, but you're putting that on yourself.
Exactly. Get up and go to work with a different attitude. Look at it in a different way. Doesn't mean you're going to be there. And a lot of things, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this myself, was, well, if I change the way I look at it, then I might have to stay there. If I make it work, then I might have to stay there, and I don't want to be there. I had a good friend say to me, well, like it, do the best you can while you're there, and then be gone. And give yourself permission to be gone. But don't be miserable while you're there.
Yeah, and also look forward to what's waiting for you outside of there too. And we'll talk about that on future editions of the program. We're going to talk about some great stuff. Finding your bliss, your passion, all kinds of good things. Your special purpose. We actually talked about that on our radio show this past weekend, and I'm sure it'll
blank a bunch of the things you had to say about special purposes.
The television show is completely unedited, by the way, and I should mention, in all seriousness, is unscripted too, and we're quite proud of that. I think whatever is working through you, Brenda, through me, as far as the conduit for kind of directing traffic on the television format, we both really look at as gifts that we love very much from the universe, and we're happy to be able to use them. And if you're enjoying this, then that's what it's all about. And again, the idea is to empower you and help you find your own answers for yourself.
Your own gifts.
Yes.
Become your own guru.
Become your own guru. We have a boxed kit you can buy. We'll get it ready in the stores for Christmas. It's, we have the deluxe edition too. So $49.95 for the basic. Well, we'll tell you all about it a little later on.
I think we can do that for. Okay.
This is just a trick to be able to get you to call Mumbai and be very irritated around Thanksgiving when you need a last-second gift. That's what it is. So, 2 to 4 month shipping, my friends. It's all I can do. So, no limits. That's what we're going to start with as far as our discussion to put the, well, maybe not final plank in the bridge between the world and how folks view it, Brenda Burgett, but at least another plank that's there. So, limits. You know, what are the limits as far as how we can view the world? Because there's some pretty zany ways to view it, I guess.
I can't do that. I really cannot do that because I have a boss who has a really bad attitude and picks on me. I can't do that. That's just not something I can do. You say I have no limits and you don't work in the same office I work in. Or I have a husband who will not allow me to do this. I have problems physically, so therefore I am limited. Yeah, they're endless. There's just no end to the limits you can put on yourself. And if you see them as limits, they are limits and they'll stop you.
When I find myself doing what you've just said, Brenda, I go berserk. It's
Yeah.
probably one of the times that I dislike, I can't say I dislike myself, but really I dislike what I'm doing the most.
Exactly.
Because I am a little bit out there. You are a little bit out there. As far as, again, just contrasting, I think, with what we see in other people, and they're minding their own business. They're doing what works for them.
Exactly.
We're not necessarily saying, again, in any way, and by the way, we have not mastered these things. You'll always hear us say that we're working on these constantly ourselves, but being aware, being cognizant of these techniques, of these facts, of these things that are in our world, not facts necessarily, just the fact that...
Opportunities.
Yeah.
Opportunities to change what you have going on if you don't like them. And, you know, first of all, we have to say there's no real right and there's no real wrong. So I would never say, Chris, you're doing that wrong. What I might say is, you know, you might want to introduce a thought here. See how this resounds with you. It's a kinder way of saying, Chris, get your head out of dark places. That's not working for you. You know what I'm saying. It's the limits we put on ourselves are real. That boss that's sitting there that had a bad day yesterday and a bad night last night, he is probably or she is picking on you. That's reality, but they can't pick on you if there's nothing to pick on. You know, it's this, take yourself out of that victim role and become who you are and do what you do and do the best thing you can do and take your mind out of there. You know, Brenda has left the planet is something I like to say to myself. And when
Elvis left the building. Brenda leaves the planet, so,
when
yeah.
I find myself in a situation, which I'm finding quite a bit lately, I'm in a transitional part of my life, and I think we all are. And I'm still doing things that I really would rather not be doing, so Brenda does leave the planet. It's a lot easier than getting a gun and going after someone, which is a joke. I would never do that.
Thank you very much. Brenda Burgett's left the planet by me, so she's on her way. She's going to Mars.
She was never really.
She's going to take me with her. There's a fried banana sandwich waiting there. I know.
Get on my broom.
You know, it's funny. I just heard myself do that. It was one of the first commercials I ever cut in radio. I have to tell a personal story here. I mean, you got to allow me these anecdotes, right?
We have to, don't we?
I just heard them today.
Tell us anyway.
There's a song called Elvis Presley by a German metal band called Fortune. No one's going to know what I'm talking about, but there, it's out in the open, and maybe one person's going to go, I know that song! So anyway, put the song on a mixed CD that I made, and I found this commercial that I did way back in the day when I first got into radio, where I was Sammy Davis Jr. and Elvis Presley, and I sliced a little piece of me being Elvis on there, and that's what made me think it was so funny it would come up today like that, but there it is.
There it is.
Okay, well that gap's been bridged, thank goodness. So, fried banana sandwich, anyone?
So we let him do that, huh, Jason?
They're going to change the rules of the show on me.
Here we go.
No longer allowed to tell personal stories. It's kaput.
Yes, your
So,
personal stories are always welcome.
I would hope so, because they can, in fact, bridge gaps that we never saw coming, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But, all right, Brenda, the limits that you're talking about, ones that I hear constantly from folks, and again, you're not necessarily saying that your boss isn't being a crank, that
No.
they aren't trying to put a lid on your freedoms or your thoughts that you might do whatever it is, come and go as you please, your happiness. People will do that. Any little tiny sliver of control you'll notice that folks may have, a lot of times they tend to use it and they tend to abuse it in a lot of ways because it works for them, I guess. It makes them feel powerful in some way. And I would say that they should look maybe to feel powerful in a different way, but you have to learn how to deflect that. So in viewing that, again, how you view the world, others' treatment of you, you can change that.
You absolutely can change that. And we talked about this on the show Saturday. But I met the most amazing lady. I need to talk about Grace again. Grace is an absolutely beautiful woman. And her son brought her to talk to me. And because she's in a wheelchair, couldn't come up the steps to my house. So we set out, listened to the birds. And here's this beautiful person, 91 years old. And she's a little bit looking for, she's lost a little, looking for something. I'm thinking at 91, this lady is so progressive and so where I want to be someday that she's asking, where am I going next? And I'm okay with it, but what do I do? That openness and that looking at what was around her, there was no limits in her mind. You know, she's in a wheelchair. She's dependent on other people to take her places. She's wanting to know, where am I going next? What am I going to do? And excited about it, not whining or wondering why she wasn't walking anymore, but just, you know, what does my guides and my spirit say that's ready, that I should be thinking about next? That's where I want to be. There's no limits on that lady. None.
Yeah. And it's limits, Brenda, that quite frankly you and I can't possibly imagine
No.
being under the guises of having to deal with. We'll talk also about, I think in future, for lack of a better term, I hate to use this term, but maybe miracles or miraculous type things that can happen because of your own energy. Yeah, healing is amazing.
Healings or instant healings. You can have whatever you want.
But Brenda, aside from, and again, wherever you believe this comes from, you know, up I go and, you know, you will walk again because I say you will, and up they go from whatever belief or however else it is that it happens. It sounds like the first key that we're talking about was someone who literally has a limitation of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can equate this to any limitation that you might say you have in your own life, like your boss or like your wife or husband saying you can't do this or I don't like you doing that. Things that are trying to keep the real you from being out in the open to enjoy and experience this existence. You could look at someone like that and say, wow, they got a mountain to climb and they are climbing it in here and in here every day because they've chosen to.
Step at a time.
Step at a time.
Step at a time. And the big things are, they're all big things. They're all big things to us. I've got a book that's been screaming at me to get finished. And the limits I put on myself, I cannot possibly write this book because my beloved mother needs to go to Wally World.
Wally World would be a code name in our part of the world for Walmart Incorporated, by the way. Sam's, we don't have those here. So.
No, but my mom is one of those people that if you don't have to come over and take me to Wally World until you're ready. But instead I get up and Wally World calls. Those are limits. It's not getting out of a wheelchair. It's not curing myself of cancer. It's not dealing with anything. What it is that's a limit. And I put it there in my way. Put it there, get up in the morning and sit down at the computer and write the darn book.
But again, key factor here, because you've acknowledged that you put it in your way and you're not blaming anybody else,
Can't do that.
you can remove the roadblock as quickly as you put it in.
Right. When you give somebody else your power, you know, my darn mother is messing me up here. That's just, okay. I put it there. Gave her the power she didn't want in the first place. I have the power. I can write the book.
Again, huge piece of everything that we'll talk about as far as
stuff.
making sure that you keep that power. It does belong to you. And again, you live in a world that you create. You live in a world that you perceive, that you view in your own way. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. It's not Shangri-La, but you can sure make it that way every day. And you may eventually find that it is your Shangri-La if you practice these things enough, I think, Brenda. Your life does get better.
And recognizing it. You know, that's huge. You don't beat yourself up. Oh my gosh, I've done it again. Here I am, you know, 5 years later, and I'm writing a book. Well, guess what? I'm writing the book as long as I'm writing the book, and when I get tired of setting limits on myself, then I'll finish the book.
Yeah, it's a fairly amazing world as far as what can be accomplished. Again, we've had Major League Baseball players that haven't had whole hands before. I mean, thinking of Mr. Abbott, who used to pitch in the 80s. I know you don't know who that is, but I certainly remember that. And remember King Friday from the Land of Make-Believe for Mr. Rogers? I mean, he was king of an entire kingdom with no arms. Oh, I'm going to come. I mean, so how could you possibly think of anything more amazing than that? I know I'm being silly, but it's true. It's
very true, and there's so many cool things. Go back to the fantasy in your childhood. Go back. If you didn't have it, then invent it now or enjoy it now. That's why these movies are so popular right now. The Harry Potters and even the other ones, which I have yet to see. But I mean, we all, if it's fantasy and we get into it, we sit in a movie theater and we see we're flying or whatever, you know what, we probably can't just flap our arms and fly, but we can fly in our minds. And we can be as free as we want to be, and it's wide open.
Yeah.
It's just wide open.
Love to talk on a future edition, Brenda, about something I perceive as really starting to open up in our world right now, and that would be expression, because this is something that the 50s to a degree and then the 60s really threw the paint on the canvas in all different colors, and we've been trying. Expression is it's a learning process, I think, for humans in general, Brenda, because humans want to express what it is that they're feeling, they want to express what it is that they're experiencing, that they want to try and communicate who they are. Expressionism, I guess, in a nutshell, is really a lot of fun and is part of why we're here. Taking nothing away from anyone that may have grown up in the 20s or 30s, but have you ever seen a picture that was taken at a train station or a rugby tournament or a baseball game back in those days? Every man is clad in the same suit with the same brown coat and the same brown derby or hat on the top of his head, and is smoking probably as well.
Right.
I can't think of maybe anything more conformist, and I know that that is part of the equation for humans. We like uniformity, but at the same time we also love to express who we are, and we need to let that part of us out in some way.
I noticed some pictures of girls' basketball teams, recent ones, and boys' basketball teams, and they all have the same look on their face. What's that all about? Have you looked at that?
Oh, I haven't noticed
that.
Like, these like high school teams?
They're like outlaws.
Oh.
They have this really weird look on their face, which is cute, because here's these young, attractive kids who bounce balls around and are good at it, and they're all looking like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance, whatever. You know, they've got this really solemn look. I'm wondering who started that.
I don't know.
But it's ridiculous. I mean, they're all gloomy, and there's usually somebody in the background that's got fingers behind somebody's head or being a...
That's how it was when I was in a group
yeah,
picture in school. But.
You have to do that. But here these are. Have you seen those, Jason? What is it?
Jason works off camera for us. He's our technical support. So. Da-dun, 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 da-dun. He just did it
last
himself.
week we got his head occasionally. Now this week we gave him a chair.
Yeah. We got rid of the...
Jason.
Well, he burned some coals into the Persian rug that we had him on a couple weeks ago,
yes.
So now we had to take it away from him.
Dark chocolate and raspberries all over the furniture.
I think the dark chocolate came out, though I got most of that, so... Brenda Burgett, Intuitive Medium Spiritual Advisor, with us on the program. As always, I'm Ian Hansen, your host. This is Bridging the Gap, and we are Bridging the Gap today in part 2 of our conversation about the world and what you think of it and how you perceive it in general terms. And Brenda, we've talked about limits. Let's go into 2 other compartments to finish out, the next of which would be energy. And you have a little saying which kind of makes me gag a little bit, but what is it?
Energy flows where, or attention goes where energy flows, and I've swiped that like every other good
I
person.
choked it down.
I got that from, it's a Huna thing.
Amazing stuff too, by the way.
Huna from Hawaii. We'll be talking about that eventually. I love Serge King, and he wrote this in the 70s, and it was like energy goes where attention flows, or energy flows where attention goes. One of those. We'll get it straight. And The Secret, if anybody listened to that, and it's basically saying whatever we're thinking about, that's where our energy goes.
Whatever we're thinking about is what we're giving our energy to.
We have control, and our feelings are a barometer of that. What's going on? How do I feel? Well, what am I thinking about? That's the energy I'm putting out, and that's coming right back to visit with me.
Okay, so that literally starts from somewhere within you
It's
and
a
then
thought.
emanates outward, and it's probably more powerful if it's voiced, I would guess, too, Brenda, or is it?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
No,
Okay.
not necessarily. In fact, as an intuitive, sensitive child, that's what caused me more problems than probably with the average person, because whatever somebody was thinking was exactly what I got. Their energy was coming across to me, and they were saying, what a sweet little girl, and they were saying, what a brat, thinking, what a brat. So talk about confusion.
Yeah.
A brat. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't imagine saying that about Brenda, having known her for the short while that I have, at least.
You don't.
There's been not a skosh of bratty behavior at all. We haven't seen
no.
anything like that
Perfect.
in our time
Perfect.
together for Bridging
Right.
the Gap. So, all right, Brenda, so again, it's all about, again, being, I guess, what it is that you want, not just getting outside these limits that we've talked about and about the perceptions, being nice to people, being nice to yourself, certainly first and foremost. You have to treat number one good if you're going to go out in the world and treat everybody else right. We're also talking about just thought in general. I mean, thoughts are powerful.
Extremely powerful. This has been my day to have bad service and almost everything at a deli, and then at a dress shop and several different places. And my past Brenda would have probably been a little nasty. Very nasty, in fact. I might even have talked to a supervisor in one of these cases. But I found myself saying, okay, practice what you preach here. This is no big deal. And I don't need whatever it is I thought I needed. And life is good, and I made a joke out of it. But my energy changed, and by changing my energy, the people that were waiting on me, it was easier for them as well.
Yeah.
So it's sort of try it. Use it as an experiment. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I'm going to hurt them.
No, this premise will be very difficult for you to manifest within the city limits of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I should say. That's going to be a hard one for you to get.
Philadelphia.
I love the people in Philly, by the way. But again, there are pockets in the world, Brenda, where you're going to experience more animosity than others, for whatever reason. It could be a spirited mob after a wild hockey game, and they're just excited and exuberant, and they're taking it out on each other by, fisting in each other's face, and I don't know. They riot sometimes after championships are won, things like that. You might walk into the wrong bar. Maybe people at the mall are snooty with you one day. I don't know. I mean, it's happened to us all. But again, the energy you put out in general is energy that you're going to get back. Don't always expect it to be that way. But remember, it ticks with you. So in a way, you've always got some to draw on. You do. You.
And by changing the way you feel about that, it changes what's going on inside you. And that leads to, when you were so angry all the time, that makes us sick. That's another whole show. Why are we sick? Take a look at your thoughts. Take a look at what you're manifesting in your life by the energy you're giving out. Because whatever you're throwing out there, you can bet it's going through your body before it gets out there.
Yeah. Very true. Okay, so we'll talk again about the link between thoughts and energies and your physical well-being in the future. So much for us to do on Bridging the Gap. We have an endless variety of subjects to talk about as we go forward. Last part, however, compartmentally of the world and how you think of it or perceive it is now is the moment for power. Now is the moment to take it back. I mean, right now, you're watching this at home, and again, this is going to sound like the worst infomercial you've heard on late night TV, but it's true. Right now is the time to call this number and take back your power with a Visa or MasterCard. I mean, some people need that kind of a push, I suppose, Brenda, but really it does and can start immediately.
And so many times with myself, it's like, well, just as soon as I get this resolved, when I get a little more money, when I'm not worried about family, when whatever, and you can do that for a long, long time, and you can find more reasons and more excuses just to not do it. Guess what? You can change it right now. Doesn't matter what you thought 5 minutes ago. It doesn't matter who you flipped off in a fit of road rage on Wenatchee Avenue earlier today, and I didn't do that, by the way. I was just waiting. Do it now. Start it right now. And you're at home safe by yourself, and there's nobody to challenge you. That's okay. Take back your energy. Take back your power. And be happy about it. Don't beat yourself up over one single thing you have done or you haven't done. That's gone. we have right now.
And don't say for a second, I can hear the George McFlys of the world saying this too, oh, I don't have any power of my own, really. There's none for me. It's just not for me. Everyone has their own power. Everyone has their own energy.
That's the power you're giving yourself that week, whatever. And if that works for you, who are we to change it?
Well, we laugh at Crispin Glover when he plays the part because it's funny, because we've all known someone, I think, that's been that browbeaten in their life. But however funny it is to see him act that part out, it's no laughing matter in real life. I mean, it really is something that we'd love to see people be able to get through, and get through on their own. It's great to have people prop you up, but again, how empowering is it to say, I found this power and I did it myself?
And don't think, and I can hear the wheels turning now, I'm going to tell my husband about this. And this is something my friends need to hear. And they'll get their information when they're supposed to. The person who, Wayne Dyer, love Wayne Dyer.
Where's the Wayne Dyer buzzer? Did we get it installed? There's the Wayne Dyer buzzer.
Favorite people in the world. Even though he does have a girlfriend who's way too young for him. Wayne,
you might still have a shot. We're gonna get to Wayne. We're gonna get him some nice 8x10s and we'll see what happens.
I figured that maybe my friend and I, whose name is Jane Doe, who wants to remain anonymous, we could trap him on the Maui beach and kind of trip him and net him. But now it's all over.
The old trip and net, a celebrity...
Stalk and net. Stalk and net, whatever works. But he said, don't think that the person who needs to hear what is being said isn't here and should be here. You're here. This is you. Don't start doing that. That's so easy for women, I think, more so than men. It's like, oh my God, how am I going to get this to my kids? How am I going to get this to my spouse? Don't worry about getting to take your power back now. Take care of you on the spot. Get over that stuff. You know, it doesn't work for you. It never has. It never will. Can't change anybody. You don't change yourself. You just start where you're at and go from there.
Yeah, and don't look back either.
No.
I mean, again, for contrast purposes,
Sure.
it's okay. I think actually it's wonderful, especially when you're feeling down or distraught about where you are. Take a look back. I'm sure you're probably in a better spot than you used to be. And if you're not, you can change that.
Hey, guess what? Time to move on or not.
All right, so now is the hour to take back your power. And I just did it too, and the vomit is rising, I think. So we hate those kinds of things. We couldn't help that it rhymed. So, Brenda, anything else to add on the subject of the world and how we view it before we close the chapter on these two parts to kind of get this started? I know we'll revisit everything at least a billion times for Bridging the Gap, but are we pretty well wrapped up with it? Folks have what they need now to move forward?
I think so.
Okay, very good. So, question time. Do we have time, Jason? I mean, we're up on... We're trying to keep these to a half an hour, but what was that?
4 minutes?
4 minutes? Okay, we can do a question in 4 minutes. I think that was 4 minutes.
Well, either that or he's making an obscene gesture, and you know...
That's how they do it in Uruguay.
Lithuania.
Her in this Lithuanian business. We're going to get her to learn more than one country in the middle of Europe at one of these points.
More than one
There
country?
are more. Yeah, there's been some conquering that's happened in the last 500 years.
Nobody
Brenda,
ever
yeah,
tells
so.
me anything.
And some gerrymandering and all kinds of stuff you want to know about, that's for sure. So, you ready for this question?
I'm
It's
ready.
extremely brief. So,
Well, that helps.
like last week's was, it went on, and there was glasses breaking and vases shattering and hoodies. It was stuff going on all over the place. This one's straightforward.
All right.
All right, it comes into us from, I didn't read this in advance, by the way, Pinhead's sister
I met him.
from Washington State. Okay, so we have Doug Bradley, who plays the lead Cenobite in the Hellraiser movies, who's watching our show. I love it! Okay.
And I've met Pinhead.
I would not want to meet a Cenobite. We're not showing that movie to Brenda Burgett. Those are bad.
Can't see that one.
I actually loved those when I was a kid.
You're-
Those are great books, too. So I shouldn't be saying that. They pull people apart in those stories. You ready, Brenda?
I'm ready.
Okay. Shall we read it like Pinhead, Jason? He gives me the thumbs up. Okay. I don't know that I can pull this off, but my brother was a turkey. Well, that sounds like one of those wrestling guys. I'll just read it. We'll get Doug Bradley to do this some other time. My brother was a turkey while we were growing up, and he's still acting like an idiot. an idiot turkey now, apparently. How do you forgive someone who continues to be a pinhead and doesn't ask for forgiveness? Signed, Pinhead's sister.
What's he got to ask for forgiveness for? He is who he is.
That was pretty simple.
You know, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to look at why he was such a turkey. He was who he was. You were a child. You saw what was going on. And you allowed it, and you brought it on into your adult life. So, I don't know who's Pinhead.
Yeah, this is a tough one, I'm afraid, for Pinhead's sister. We'll call her PS, I guess, for short here. But PS, this is a tough one, I think, and I hate to say that it's an easy one because people struggle with it, but this is a perfect opportunity to own how you feel about someone else.
Nothing. You're not going to change him.
No.
Why would you want to? He's your brother. You don't have to like him. You have to deal with him when you deal with him, and deal with him in the best way that you can. And let it go at that. His life is what he's created, and if you want to let his misery spill over into yours, that would be your choice.
That's right. And although I know you probably object to this term, Brenda, I have to say, of PS's question, you have to kind of look at this as a real self-centered sort of behavior, I think, and not in the best way for PS, because it's not working for her.
Not working.
Think about those expectations. What if you were to go into a diner and say, well, why isn't the cook clean-shaven? I like a clean-shaven man when he's cooking my eggs. And why isn't the waitress 6'2"? And how come she didn't call me honey? Because all good waitresses are supposed to call you honey. How many expectations can you levy? And I know this person is family, but how many expectations can you levy on the rest of the world before you are miserable?
And how boring.
Yeah.
There's not much room left if you're constantly judging, looking at the way people are treating you or not treating you. Things they're doing or not doing, it's just none of, why are you making that your business? You don't have to. You can, of course.
Very
You
true.
will or you won't. You do or you don't. Your choice.
Brenda is usually the one who sees apparitions, but I have spied a couple in the corner since we just had that last conversation, and they are Norman E. Rockwell and Elizabeth I, and they are not happy. They are shooting us some bad looks right now, so how dare you? So,
I'm sorry.
that was Elizabeth I.
Norman and Elizabeth. We will apologize to you, but hardly anybody else ever.
No apologies
No
here.
apologies.
No apologies here. Really, again, trying to get folks to recognize their own power and again get their own answers, and sometimes they're tough to hear, I think.
Well,
in some ways.
Yes, they can be, but they're even tougher when you hear them and you don't think they apply to you, and then you all of a sudden you're whipping along and you think, ooh, that was my message. So that's opening up your own answers. We come with them and hearing whatever it takes to say, gently, don't be hard on yourself. We can change this. I can change this if I want to. Or I can be as unhappy as I want to be, and that's okay too. If that's what you want to do and that's the way you're living, I don't have a problem with that. Just don't get in my space.
Right, and if that person does get in your space, don't take it on.
Move quickly.
That's right, move quickly out of the way. Thanks, Pinhead's sister, for the question. I didn't know that Pinhead had a sister, and I can't imagine that the birthing of either was very happy, because that's a lot of pins. So.
It is.
My wife, we'll wrap up here in a second, but my wife, we have a sponsor who is an acupuncturist on our radio program in our local region here that we do, and he's great. And my
Greg
wife
Shannon.
just went to visit Greg Shannon. Yes, I guess we can say his name.
Absolutely.
He won't mind. So, Greg Shannon at Harmony Acupuncture in Central Washington, if you ever look him up. I was hoping we could do this from like a cloud somewhere, but I guess people are going to find out where we are eventually.
Very
so
gentle,
it's too late.
gentle, wonderful.
I don't want them outside my door. That's the biggest thing. You see the Ian Hansen residence, you just float on by, leave your cards and letters. Explosive devices can go next door to my neighbor with the lights. But anyway, we should edit that out. Anyway, no, leave it in. I told her, because she's getting ready to go in for acupuncture, and that's exactly what I texted her back. I said, think of Pinhead often while you're on the table, because it's like the worst thing in science fiction that ever went wrong. She has no clue what we're talking about. But Jason's laughing, so that's all that matters. So.
Surround yourself with kids. What do you expect?
Thank God I can still be a kid to somebody. Oh yeah. So Brenda Burgett would be that somebody on most editions of Bridging the Gap. She is here for them. I am as well. I'm Ian Hansen, your host for the program, and today we've talked about, once again, how you see the world. Again, the world and your perception of it, it can change also over time, we should say quickly too, Brenda?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's another nice thing about it, is it doesn't always have to be the same.
No, and basics don't change. The ideas that work don't change. But the way your world is and what's happening changes.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a good thing.
So roll with the changes, and again, try to see your world in the best possible light. If you're seeing it in a way that you don't like right now, think of ways you can change it and manifest them. And if one doesn't work, go to another, and another, and another. It's never ending.
Exactly. You move from one vibrational point to another. You do the step-up thing. And the Hicks, Esther and Jerry Hicks, I love it. They talk about, there's a book, Law of Attraction, and it's moving up the ladder. A whole big thing, and I'm not big on charts and things, so I cut to the chase and just figured it out. But if you like to make diagrams and charts, it's an excellent book, Law of Attraction.
We're going to get the Wayne Dyer buzzer, which, by the way, will go off every time Brenda mentions Wayne Dyer. We're going to have to get something for the Hickses, too, because they are referenced often here as well. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And
we'll get the Hicks cuckoo clock.
Neil Donald Walsh.
Neil Donald Walsh, another one you'll hear Brenda mention quite a bit. So
yeah.
Everyone will have their prop at some point on the program in the future. So.
Brian Weiss, Gary Zukoff.
You're
Cool
killing
people.
me. We're going to have, Jason and I have some work to do. We have a late night tonight to think up all of these different props. So, Brenda Burgett, thanks so much again for the time as always.
It's been a pleasure.
Always fun to be with you for Bridging the Gap. Again, Brenda's an intuitive medium and spiritual advisor. Visit her online, visit us online, bridgingthegapwithbrenda.com, or the television project specifically can be found at bridgingthegaptv.com. On either YouTube or Ustream, just look us up based on our name, Bridging the Gap. You'll find us there, and we'll see you next time here on Bridging the Gap. Until then, enjoy your existence, folks. We'll talk to you soon.